Have you ever felt the weight of words you almost spoke but held back at the last moment? That strange pull in your spirit whispering, "Don't say that yet," even when your heart was bursting to share? What if I told you that those moments of divine restraint weren't coincidence but protection? That sometimes the greatest act of faith isn't speaking your truth, but safeguarding it until heaven says it's time. You thought silence meant God had forgotten your prayers. But maybe silence isn't absence. Maybe it's the sound of something sacred being prepared in the quiet. There are nights when your heart feels like it's carrying secrets too heavy for one soul to bear. You've prayed for breakthrough, for clarity, for someone to understand the depth of what you're walking through. Yet something deep within keeps whispering, "Not yet. Not this person. Not this moment." And you wonder if you're being overly cautious or if there's wisdom in the waiting. The urge to share, to be known, to find validation through vulnerability feels overwhelming. But there's a difference between being authentic and being unprotected. There's a difference between testimony and premature revelation. You lie awake replaying conversations, wondering if you should have spoken up, shared more, revealed the dreams God has been whispering to your heart. The silence feels like isolation. The discretion feels like disconnection. Would you still trust divine timing if it meant guarding your heart longer than you hoped? Would you still believe in God's protection if it looked like loneliness? Because sometimes the very people you want to trust with your sacred spaces aren't ready to hold them with reverence. Maybe that's why wisdom has been growing in you so slowly, so carefully. Maybe that's why discernment feels like a muscle you've been building without realizing it. God has been teaching you to recognize the difference between people who celebrate your calling and people who simply tolerate it. Between those who can carry the weight of your testimony and those who would use it as entertainment. The spirit within you has been learning to distinguish between safe harbors and dangerous shores dressed up as friendship. Sometimes what feels like God asking you to hide is actually God asking you to honor the sacred. When Jesus healed the blind men, he told them to tell no one. Not because the miracle wasn't real, but because timing matters in the kingdom. Not because healing should be shameful, but because premature revelation can invite premature opposition. There's something powerful about allowing God's work in your life to take root in secret before it blooms in public. There's protection in letting heaven establish what earth will eventually celebrate. It could be that the dreams you've been guarding, the visions that feel too precious to share, the promises God whispered in your prayer closet, are being protected not from blessing, but for blessing. Like seeds that need darkness before they can reach for light. Like wine that needs time in the quiet before it's ready to be poured. Your silence isn't stagnation. Your discretion isn't doubt. It's divine strategy. Our minds crave immediate validation. We want to share our breakthroughs the moment they happen, our revelations the second we receive them. But faith teaches us to sit with sacred things until peace becomes our compass for sharing. There's emotional intelligence in understanding that not every person in your life is equipped to handle every layer of your story. Some people can celebrate your surface but can't honor your depth. Some can cheer for your success but can't carry your struggle. Maybe it was never about finding people who understood everything about your journey, but about becoming someone who could discern which parts of your story were ready to be shared and which parts needed more time in the secret place with God. Maybe wisdom isn't about having all the answers, but about knowing which questions to keep between you and heaven a little longer. The psychological truth is that premature sharing can sometimes dilute the very power God is building in your testimony. When we speak things before they're fully formed in our spirit, we can accidentally invite confusion where clarity was growing. When we share sacred revelations with people who aren't spiritually aligned with our calling, we can find ourselves defending what should be developing. There's science in the spirit that says some things grow stronger in the quiet. This isn't about secrecy born from shame. This is about stewardship born from wisdom. This is about understanding that your story, your dreams, your prophetic insights are not just personal experiences, but spiritual assignments that require careful handling. The widow who gave her 2 mites didn't announce her offering. She gave in secret, and heaven took notice. Sometimes the most powerful testimonies are the ones that develop in darkness before they shine in daylight. There's a difference between hiding and protecting. Hiding comes from fear, but protecting comes from love. Love for what God is doing in your life. Love for the people who will eventually benefit from your testimony when it's ready. Love for yourself and the sacred space God has carved out in your heart. You're not keeping secrets because you're ashamed. You're stewarding mysteries because you're wise. The seasons of silence are not seasons of stagnation. They are seasons of sanctification. God has been preparing not just your blessing, but your ability to carry it well. He's been developing not just your testimony, but your discernment about when and how to share it. The waiting hasn't been wasted. The quiet hasn't been empty. It's been the sound of your roots growing deeper, your foundation becoming stronger, your spirit learning to distinguish between divine timing and human impatience. One day, you'll look back and realize the silence wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The discretion wasn't disconnection. It was divine protection. And when the time comes to share what God has been building in the secret place, it will carry a weight and authority that could only have been developed in the quiet. That emotional wisdom you've been developing through every disappointment, every closed door, every person who walked away when you needed them most, wasn't random. It was curriculum. Heaven has been teaching you to recognize the difference between people who can handle your light and people who would try to dim it. Between those who celebrate your growth and those who feel threatened by it. Between safe spaces and pretty facades that crumble under the weight of real vulnerability. You've been learning to trust that inner voice that says, "Not yet," even when your heart is ready to pour out everything. That gentle restraint isn't fear speaking. It's wisdom. It's the spirit within you recognizing that some revelations require prepared ground. Some testimonies need the right season. Some dreams need protection until they're strong enough to withstand scrutiny. Think about how a pearl is formed. It begins with an irritant, something that causes discomfort. But instead of rejecting it, the oyster covers it with layers of protection, slowly, patiently, until something beautiful emerges. Your seasons of silence have been like those protective layers. Each moment of choosing discretion over disclosure, each time you held back when you wanted to share, each night you processed alone what you couldn't yet trust with others, was adding strength to what God is creating in you. The enemy wants you to believe that silence equals isolation, that discretion means disconnection. But there's a profound difference between being alone and being selective. There's wisdom in understanding that not every season requires an audience. Some of your greatest victories will happen in rooms where no one else is watching. Some of your most powerful prayers will be whispered in corners where only heaven can hear. Maybe that's why your prayer life has been shifting. Maybe that's why you find yourself drawn to quiet moments instead of crowded conversations. Maybe that's why certain relationships feel different now, not because love has diminished, but because discernment has increased. You're not becoming antisocial. You're becoming selective. You're not withdrawing from people. You're drawing closer to purpose. So as you continue walking this path of divine discretion, remember that your silence has been sacred. Your waiting has been worship. And your discernment has been a gift developing in the quiet places of your heart. The seasons of saying nothing have been preparing you for the moments when your words will carry the weight of heaven itself. Trust the timing, honor the process, and know that what God protects in secret, He will one day reveal in power. Your story is still being written, and the most beautiful chapters are often the ones that begin in silence.